Every night at exactly 11:30, millions of Americans would turn on their TVs, sit in front of the screen, and wait for The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. For 3 decades, that program ruled the airwaves, becoming America's living room. Yet, before his passing, Johnny Carson decided to reveal a truth that shocked the entire entertainment industry. 9 famous guests who once sat across from him on the show were in fact individuals who had to live behind carefully built facades created by film studios. Some passed away suddenly due to illness. Some spent 10 years sharing a home with a colleague despite having families of their own. And even young stars agreed to get close to powerful producers just to secure a role. Who were those 9 stars? And what did they have to sacrifice to protect their secrets in a Hollywood where being different was seen as an unforgivable sin? 1. Marlon Brando, the hidden connections Hollywood kept silent. People remember him as Don Vito Corleone in The Godfather, or for his raw cry in A Streetcar Named Desire. But behind that legend was a private life so tangled that even Hollywood tried to look away. Marlon Brando married 3 times Anna Kashfi in 1957, Movita Castaneda in 1960, and Tarita Teripaya, his co-star in Mutiny on the Bounty in 1962, and had over 10 children. Yet in a rare 1976 interview with Rolling Stone, he openly said, "I have no boundaries when it comes to love. I will love whoever I find beautiful." That statement stunned the media at a time full of prejudice. A masculine icon daring to say such a thing was unheard of. In later years, accounts from his peers deepened the mystery. Legendary musician Quincy Jones revealed in a 2018 Vulture interview that Brando had been drawn to many powerful male figures, like Richard Pryor, James Baldwin, and Marvin Gaye, icons of 1970s American music. Pryor's daughter, Rain Pryor, later confirmed her father's connection with Brando. Even earlier in the 1950s, Hollywood whispered about Brando and James Dean, 2 rebels of the screen. They were often seen at Villa Capri Bar in Los Angeles and would drive around Beverly Hills through the night. A letter reprinted by journalist Edward Stevenson in Hollywood Confidential 1989 quoted Dean calling Brando the person I learned the most from. Brando, however, refused to discuss Dean after his death in 1955. That silence only fueled more speculation about their bond. Though he never made anything public, Brando was known as someone who didn't follow any rules. He spent years on Tetiaroa Island in Tahiti with Tarita and their 3 children living in near isolation. His life was shadowed by tragedy. His son Christian was convicted in a shooting in 1990, and his daughter Cheyenne later took her own life. Those losses drove Brando further into solitude, rarely giving interviews again. Johnny Carson, who had seen both Brando's glory and decline, once mentioned him on The Tonight Show in 1983 while discussing stars who don't want to be misunderstood. Carson said, "Brando doesn't pretend. If you pay attention, he just chooses not to explain, maybe because he knows Hollywood would never listen." It was one of the few times Carson publicly referred to the private friend he deeply respected. Brando's life mirrored Hollywood's contradictions, where its brightest star had to live like a recluse just to protect himself. After his death in 2004 in Los Angeles from respiratory failure, old stories resurfaced, leaving the world to wonder, did we ever truly know who Marlon Brando was? Immediately after Brando came another person who also chose to live her own way under the stage lights, a symbol just as powerful. 2. Katharine Hepburn. The Queen of Independence and the secret bonds that lasted a lifetime. She's someone who doesn't need anyone, yet makes everyone want to be near her. Johnny Carson said that during The Tonight Show on December 20, 1973, after his rare interview at Katharine Hepburn's Connecticut home. That single line summed her up perfectly: strong, proud, and defiantly against every mold Hollywood tried to impose on women. Yet, behind that independence lay a life so private, it became legend. Born in 1907 in Hartford, Connecticut, into a progressive intellectual family, Hepburn was never bound by marriage. Her only marriage to wealthy businessman Ludlow Ogden Smith lasted from 1928 to 1934. After the divorce, she asked him to change his last name to avoid affecting her career, an unprecedented move at the time. From then on, Hepburn never married again, nor allowed anyone to define her personal life. The public mostly knew her through her 26-year romance with Spencer Tracy, which began during Woman of the Year 1942. In the media, they were Hollywood's golden couple. But in truth, Tracy never divorced his wife, and Hepburn lived mostly in New York or Connecticut apart from him. Biographer William Mann wrote that their relationship was both genuine affection and a perfect facade to deflect attention from their private lives. Tracy was tied by his Catholic faith, while Hepburn needed a beautiful public story to quiet rumors about her long-term same-gender connections. The person closest to Hepburn was Laura Harding, a wealthy heiress from Princeton. They met when Hepburn was still an unknown stage actress. Harding lived with her for nearly 6 years in a small house near Westport, Connecticut. They traveled together, vacationed together, and were often photographed at public events. The New York Times ran photos of them side by side, stirring curiosity. Later, Harding continued to support Hepburn financially and emotionally during her early career struggles. When Hepburn rose to fame, Laura quietly stepped back. From the 1940s onward, another woman entered Hepburn's life, Phyllis Wilbourn, her private assistant and manager, who remained by her side for over 40 years. Wilbourn appeared in almost every public trip, lived in the same house, and cared for Hepburn until her final days. Journalist Liz Smith once wrote in Vanity Fair, Phyllis wasn't just her manager. She was the one person Hepburn trusted more than anyone. An unproduced screenplay by James Prideaux. A longtime friend described their bond as a connection that went beyond mere work. Though rumors persisted for decades, Hepburn never confirmed nor denied them. In her 1991 memoir, Me Stories of My Life, she simply wrote, "I belong to no one except my work." That line was both a confession and a way to close the curtain on public curiosity. When she passed away in 2003 at the age of 96 at her old Saybrook home, the only person beside her was Phyllis Wilbourn, the woman who had been there for more than half her life. Johnny Carson later recalled in a 1985 retrospective episode that meeting Hepburn made him afraid to ask too much, knowing she'd look straight at me and say, "I'm not answering that, Johnny." After Hepburn, Hollywood saw another man who embodied perfection so convincingly that the world adored him, yet he too had to live behind a lifelong mask. 3. Rock Hudson. The passing that forced Hollywood to face the truth. On the morning of October 2, 1985, NBC opened its news with a solemn tone. Actor Rock Hudson, star of Pillow Talk and Magnificent Obsession, has passed away in Beverly Hills from complications of illness. That announcement was a bombshell. In an instant, America's ideal man, the face adored by women and admired by men, had fallen. Within hours, newsroom phones in Los Angeles and New York wouldn't stop ringing. Everyone asked the same question: how could Rock Hudson, the symbol of perfection, fall to an illness the public believed was far removed from Hollywood? Born in 1925 in Illinois, Hudson grew up poor and worked as a mail clerk and truck driver before being discovered by talent scout Henry Wilson, the man known as the star maker of the 1950s. Wilson transformed Roy Scherer into Rock Hudson, shaping him into the model American leading man: tall, broad-shouldered, gentle smile, deep voice.